The exhibit is quite exquisite, so for those of you who have not had the opportunity to do that, we want to encourage you to take advantage of seeing it. Now, if over 200 pins are here, do you have any left in your collection?
Well, most of my pins are here, but what has happened is that people have felt sorry for me, and they have sent me pins, so we call them the pity pins, and the pity pins are accumulating. So, the best part is that, you know, as I said, I did use them for diplomacy and different things, but they also are great icebreakers. And so now people come up and talk to me in airports or stores or whatever, and they want to know why I'm wearing a particular pin or why I'm not wearing a pin, like when I'm exercising, or trying to get through security. So then they say, why aren't you? But they really, I think they're great. It's just a great way to have people come and talk. And they really have been interesting in terms of foreign policy. So just now, I just came back. I've been on a very interesting trip. I was asked by Secretary Clinton and President Obama to undertake a particular mission, which is that it's the 60th anniversary of NATO. And the heads of state met in April and decided that NATO needed a new strategic concept. The last one had been written in 1999, before NATO expanded and before 9/11. And so they decided that they would create an experts group, I call it the old people's group, to give the new Secretary General advice on how to do a strategic concept. So there are now 28 countries in NATO, and each country named one representative, and the U.S. named me. And then the Secretary General chose 12 people to be in this expert group, irritating 16 countries automatically. And then he asked me to chair it. So I have been chairing this group and doing a lot of traveling. And I, Friday, came back from Moscow, and I was meeting with the new foreign minister of Russia, who had actually been somebody I knew at the UN, and I was wearing a pin. And the pin is of a knot. And he said, so what is this pin? And I said, well, it's our bond. And then we sat down, and he said, you mean James Bond? And I said, no, our bond. And then he said, no, it looks more like oil pipelines. And I said, no. It's of our friendship, and it was given to me by your predecessor. So it was very much a part of the discussion. So.
And it's wonderful to note that you can make a connection the way you do with pins. Do you actually remember each pin that people have given you and the sentiment associated with them?
Mostly, but I have to say that as we put the book together, some of them were mystery, and we spent a lot of time looking things up. What is partly fun in the book is we have something that we call the Pindex, which explains where the pins came from, who the designer was, and where I acquired it. So, but I try very hard to remember who gave me what when I'm meeting with some foreign leader, because they actually do remember what they gave. Now, for the most part, government officials are not allowed to get things above a certain value. So most of the pins that are presents from other ministers are definitely costume jewelry, so it makes it a lot more fun. And the thing that I really want to stress is that in addition to the foreign policy stories, what they do is make it very clear that anybody can do this. These are not expensive pins, and I've had a lot of fun going to flea markets, or I've bought things in souvenir shops at the airport or whatever, is that it's a matter of just being colorful and having a good time.
Well, let's talk for a moment, if you will, about the educational component associated with the pins in the book and what you hope to achieve with the nation's students. I understand you're going to be meeting with some Arkansas students tomorrow who participated in an essay contest. Talk about that, if you would.
Well, first of all, I'm a professor, and I really do love teaching. And I also do think that in many ways, when you leave high office, there is a responsibility to try to pass on knowledge and education generally to the next generation. You know, a lot of people say, well, why did you have to write your memoirs? Who cares? But part of it is that I think it's very important to get history down and explain it. I also When I was in office, I enjoyed very much going to schools, and I think that American students, except in Arkansas, are lacking in knowledge of geography. And so I would, and in American classrooms mostly, they're flat maps with the Western Hemisphere in the middle and these two flaps on either side. And I would always ask for a globe, and I would say, people need to know, I'd turn the globe around and I'd say, people need to know that most of the people in the world live on the other side of the globe. So we then developed a Travels with the Secretary, a kind of geographical way so that people could keep up with what I was doing. And I think that's one of the reasons I like to talk to students now, because the pins I can place in some geographical location and then tell the foreign policy story that goes with it. What I have found is that the students love to know personal stories. And they actually know quite a lot in terms of what the international situation is, and they like to have discussions. And I have also learned something, and I've learned this from my own children, now aged, but also my grandchildren, is that it's a real mistake to talk down to high school students, and that they have a great grasp of issues, and it's worth really having intelligent conversations with them. So I'm very, very much looking forward to meeting with the students tomorrow.
And I understand that one of your overall goals is to make foreign policy less foreign to people.
Right. Well, first of all, I am passionate about foreign policy. It's very funny. Whenever I was not born in this country, I was born in Czechoslovakia. My father was a Czechoslovak diplomat. And we came to the United States in 1948 after the communists had taken over Czechoslovakia. And my father had defected and asked for political asylum in the United States. And at that stage, what was happening was the Rockefeller Foundation was giving grants to Central European intellectuals. And they got him a job at the University of Denver. We had no idea where Denver was. My father ended up as dean of the graduate school there. But the reason I'm telling the story is when I got there, whatever school I went to, I started an international relations club and made myself president of it. So I have always been passionate about it. And I must say, about 3 weeks ago, I went to Wellesley, as did Mrs. Clinton. They just named an institute in my name in terms of training women leaders, and I thought this is the ultimate international relations club. But I really do think that there is nothing that is that complicated about foreign policy, and I think that it affects every American in some form or another. So making it less foreign having people explain what the impact is of what is happening, whether I think people now know about Afghanistan, but in terms of what is of import in terms of China rising and what is going on in India and what is happening in Latin America, it all affects our daily lives. And I think if it can be made understandable to people who are not experts, first of all, it's interesting, and I think people really get into it.
All right, well, thank you.